Hello there everyone and welcome to TVS Nightline, here with me, Cheryl Traminato, and as always, thank you for joining me tonight. Now, on to the headlines. Remain calm, have faith in and fully support the government in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. This was urged by Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin as he urged the people to trust the government in curbing the COVID-19 during the period of the emergency.
Mudah-mudahan kita akan dapat melandaikan lekuk jangkitan COVID-19 dengan segera dan seterusnya mengurangkan tekanan ke atas sistem kesihatan negara kita yang sedang terbeban dengan peningkatan kes-kes positif COVID-19 saban hari.
The Prime Minister also called on politicians, civil society leaders, NGOs, religious bodies, youth, undergraduates and all levels of society to be united and work together in facing this difficult time. Muhyiddin also warned of firm action against anyone who attempts to impede government efforts to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. He explained that the declaration of the state of emergency is for the well-being of the people and security of the country.
The emergency declaration invoked by the government is not a military coup, nor will there be any curfew imposed. However, the government will continue to perform its functions and duties as usual.
Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin stressed that the emergency declaration by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is not a form of military coup.
Ingin saya tegaskan bahawa darurat yang diisytiharkan oleh Kebawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia Seri Paduka Baginda Yang di-Pertuan Agong bukanlah suatu bentuk rampasan kuasa tentera. Perintah berkurung juga tidak akan dilaksanakan. Sebaliknya, sepanjang tempoh darurat ini, kerajaan awam akan terus berfungsi. Let me assure you that the civilian government will continue to function. The emergency proclaimed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is not a military coup and curfew will not be enforced.
He assured that the judiciary will also continue to function and carry out its duty without any intervention from his government.
Dan Jemaah Menteri dan Majlis Mesyuarat Kerajaan Negeri-Negeri akan terus berfungsi menurut Perlembagaan Persekutuan dan apa-apa ordinan yang dimasyhurkan oleh Kebawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia Seri Paduka Baginda Yang di-Pertuan Agong daripada semasa ke semasa. Saya memberi jaminan bahawa jentera pentadbiran dan perkhidmatan awam Kerajaan Persekutuan dan kerajaan-kerajaan negeri tidak akan terganggu dengan pengisytiharan darurat ini.
Lately, there have been attempts by some parties to force for an election to be held. As such, the Parliament and State Legislative will be suspended for a stipulated period of time and the elections would not be held during the emergency, which could last until August 1st.
Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said that he has decided against holding a snap election and promised that it would happen as soon as the situation improves. He said his decision is in line with the Islamic concept of higher objectives of the Sharia, which among others stresses on the sanctity of lives.
Keputusan untuk tidak mengadakan pilihan raya semasa pandemik COVID-19 ini masih menular ini adalah selaras dengan satu daripada 5 prinsip maqasid syariah, iaitu menjaga nyawa ataupun hifzun nafs. Dan dalam konteks ini adalah menjadi kewajipan saya sebagai ketua kerajaan untuk menjaga nyawa rakyat dengan melindungi saudara dan saudari sekalian daripada jangkitan COVID-19 ini. Ini adalah kemaslahatan yang paling utama yang dituntut oleh agama Islam.
Nevertheless, Muhyiddin gave a firm commitment that elections will be held once the special independent committee to be set up to manage the COVID-19 situation gives the word that the disease has eased off. The Prime Minister said that at a time when the country and people are facing a major difficulty, it is very important for all politicians to set aside their differences and be in solidarity with the people.
Dalam keadaan biasa, Pilihan raya kecil mesti diadakan dalam tempoh 60 hari selepas kerusi diisytiharkan kosong. Pilihan raya negeri juga mesti diadakan dalam tempoh 60 hari selepas Dewan Undangan Negeri dibubarkan. Sedangkan kita tahu rakyat pada masa ini tidak mahu pilihan raya diadakan untuk mengelakkan wabak COVID-19 merebak seperti yang berlaku selepas pilihan raya negeri Sabah baru-baru ini.
Now, the country's economic activities will continue to function throughout the duration of the state of emergency. However, it will be subject to compliance with the standard operating procedures and the re-implementation of the Movement Control Order.
Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said the government would ensure that economic activities did not halt so as to ensure that people could continue to work while business, trade and industry could continue to operate as usual.
Kerajaan juga komited untuk memastikan amalan-amalan governance terbaik terus diamalkan sepanjang tempoh pelaksanaan darurat ini. Organisasi kawal selia negara yang diiktiraf di peringkat antarabangsa iaitu Bank Negara Malaysia, Suruhanjaya Security serta Bursa Malaysia akan terus memainkan peranan mereka sebagai pemangkin, pengawal selia dan pemudah cara syarikat dan pasaran.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister assured stakeholders that Malaysia is still open for business in the face of these challenging times.
In facing these challenging times, this period of emergency will give us much needed calm and stability, as well as enable us to focus on economic recovery and regeneration. We remain committed to good governance in these times, and we have a robust and dynamic regulatory ecosystem.
Muhyiddin said the government has put in place a strategy for economic recovery centered on 6 thrusts since March last year, which was incorporated in Budget 2021.
Meanwhile, political analyst Professor Dr. Awang Azman Awang Pawi, when contacted by TVS, said a state of emergency will not have any major impact on the government administration of Sarawak. Although the election has been postponed, the Gabungan Party Sarawak government is in a stable position.
Sebab itu saya katakan penangguhan pilihan raya negeri Sarawak yang ke-12 tidak akan menyaksikan sebarang perubahan drastik dari aspek kawalan kajian negeri kerana pada dasarnya GPS masih lagi memegang kuasa sebagai kajian interim. Ini kerana GPS merupakan perintah terkini ataupun merupakan the government of the day.
Meanwhile, UNIMAS Social Science Faculty Senior Professor Dr. Arnold Puyok said the public would not need to worry as the state of emergency declared by the Prime Minister is not the same as emergencies in other countries in a state of war.
Rakyat perlu tahu maksud darurat di sini adalah kuasa akan diberikan kepada badan eksekutif, iaitu Perdana Menteri, untuk melaksanakan apa-apa polisi, apa-apa undang-undang yang dipikirkan perlu. Secara umum, rakyat tidak perlu khawatirlah tentang restriksian darurat ini.
on to some COVID-19 updates as Malaysia recorded the highest number of daily COVID-19 cases with 3,309 cases on Tuesday, bringing the cumulative total number of cases to 141,533 cases.
Among the new cases, 3,303 were locally transmitted cases, while 6 of the cases were imported cases. Meanwhile, Sarawak recorded 146 new positive COVID-19 cases today, bringing the cumulative total number of cases to 1,574 cases. Among the 146 cases, 92 were detected in Cebu, 20 in Sabah, 12 in Kanawit, 11 in Miri, 3 each in Beluru and Kuching, and 2 in Dalat, while 1 case each in Saratok, Bintulu, and Limbang. In addition, a new cluster, the Bukit Sekubang cluster in Bintulu, were also detected. The additional clusters bring Sarawak to record a total of 7 new clusters, including the Jelita cluster, Pasai cluster, Keranji Tabuan cluster, Basayap cluster, Tutong cluster, and Mador cluster.
Now, in the battle to flatten the curve of the COVID-19, a drive-through screening will be set up in Cebu. Such move is intended to accommodate the rising numbers of people undergoing the testing in person in Cebu Indoor Stadium.
Members of the public were seen queuing in the parking lot in the rain, as captured in several visuals circulated in the social media. In this sense, the drive-through screening would hopefully provide conveniences. With the facility, the public will not be required to exit their vehicles and further minimize the risk of spreading the virus. Meanwhile, TVS went to ICOM Square Kuching to look at the swab test being carried out there, and so far things seem to be going smoothly. Medical workers have been in the area since as early as 9 in the morning, working together with the police to monitor the surroundings. So far, around 1,000 people have showed up to be tested. Close contact tracing is now being rigorously carried out in ICOM Square, following a recent visit from a positive COVID-19 case in the Tutong cluster.
Tinjauan kami mendapati kawasan sekitar ICOM Square ini terkawal dan seperti yang boleh kita lihat, petugas kesihatan iaitu barisan hadapan sedang melakukan ujian swab untuk orang awam yang melalui kawasan komersial ini, dan rakyat dinasihatkan untuk tidak panik dan terus memastikan SOP untuk terus dipatuhi. Dan laporan ini bersama saya Jessica John bersama jurukamera kami Razi untuk TVS.
Meanwhile, there have been no reports of panic buying in Kuching following the proclamation of an emergency and implementation of the Conditional Movement Control Order in Kuching. Now, through TVS's survey, it was found that the public went about their daily activities as usual. Buyers continue to remain calm, and there has been no report of panic buying.
The previous MCO experience may have been a factor in preparing the public to not be hasty and easily worried.
Jaminan kerajaan mengatakan bahawa barangan keperluan insya-Allah cukup untuk sepanjang tempoh PKPP ini. Jadi tak perlulah kita untuk membuat belian panic buyer.
Si perlu terburu-buru ataupun panik nak beli barang sebab orang dah naik berbeli prepare awal sebelum esok kan. Jadi kita perlu patuhi SOP je untuk menjaga jarak masing-masing lah, jaga SOP.
Untuk sama ratok kami pernah beli barang banyak-banyak lah sebab kami beli untuk keperluan dem pun je. Yang macam jenis barang makan macam yang paling penting lah untuk kami.
A similar situation is transpiring in fitness centers and gyms. Gym owners have begun activating standard operating procedures introduced in the previous movement control order.
The SOPs that have been enforced are by providing disinfection kits to every gym goers before starting their exercise. The gym also performs daily sanitation and disinfection using UVC light.
Okay, tindakan yang kami orang immediate buatlah is kami orang directly buat fogging last night, and then kami orang print out the list untuk customer yang keluar masuk lah untuk lewat. Then kami orang ada buat phone call untuk semua customer yang masuk lah untuk verification semua. Then
setiap hari pun kami orang ada buat sanitize. So regular sanitize every day. Dan kami orang ada UVC light juga untuk disinfektan setiap hari pukul 3 sampai pukul 4 pagi. So pada masa saya member dibenarkan masuklah masa UVC light yang tengah dipasang. So far belum ada perancangan untuk penutupan, belum ada notis yang diterima, tapi kami orang hadkan penggunaan facilities, kemudahan dekat dalam gym lah, seperti water dispenser, fitting room dengan bench yang ada dalam fitting room kami orang tak benarkan member untuk pakai. So nya aja saya boleh pakai barang-barang equipment dalam gym saya.
For gym goers, it is advisable to wear a face mask while exercising, with the entry capacity being reduced to ensure that social distancing is being practiced.
The 2021 school year for students will commence on 20 January this year. Even with the implementation of the Movement Control Order, the Conditional Movement Control Order, and the Recovery Movement Control Order.
The Minister of Education, Dr. Muhammad Razi Muhammad Jidin, students who are allowed to be present physically on campus are those sitting for SPM, Malaysia Vocational Certificate SVM, Malaysian Skills Certificate SKM, STPM, the Malaysian Higher Religious Certificate, and Malaysian Vocational Diploma, as well as equivalent international examinations. Meanwhile, Razi says students at boarding and daily boarding schools who will be sitting for such exams are allowed to return to their hostels starting from January 16.
On to the next update, as the Ministry of Health, or MOH, has stipulated that level 1 and 2 COVID-19 patients undergo treatment and quarantine at home since January 1st. However, these patients will be monitored strictly by health workers.
According to Minister of Health Datuk Seri Dr. Adam Baba, a task force has been formed at the Crisis Preparedness and Emergency Response Centre, CPRC, at the state and district levels to monitor patients being treated at home. Meanwhile, patients with symptoms will be treated in hospitals and the usual monitoring would be carried out. Dr. Adam also added that level 1 and 2 patients would also be quarantined at home for 10 days and a screening test would be conducted on them on the last day. Ministry staff would assess the size of the house and number of occupants before allowing these patients to undergo treatment at their respective homes. However, if the house is too small or crowded, the patients would be taken to the hospital.
Meanwhile, work in all construction sites in the 6 states placed under the Movement Control Order, or MCO, have been ordered to stop effective tomorrow to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the construction sector.
According to Senior Minister Works Dato Sri Fadila Yusuf, exceptions have been given to certain types of construction work categorized in the list of essential services to ensure continuity. To ensure that there are no COVID-19 transmission from the construction site to the local community, movement control of workers in the centralized labor quarters would also be taken into consideration. Meanwhile, he also added workers are also not allowed to move from one construction site to another throughout the MCO to prevent the virus from spreading.
Now, AirAsia Group Berhad said domestic flights in Malaysia remain operational across several states and federal territories from tomorrow until January 26. The budget airline company said in efforts to curb the spread of the COVID-19 virus, and guests who do not wish to travel during this period can opt to cancel their flights voluntarily.
The statement also indicated that guests can also opt for unlimited flight changes without any additional cost when changed to any new travel date before March 31st on the same route for an unlimited number of times without any additional cost subject to seat availability. For essential travel during this period, AirAsia said guests must obtain a valid approval from the Royal Malaysia Police before departure. Guests also need to comply with the specific entry requirements set by certain states.
The World Health Organization is expediting implementation of the vaccine through COVAX facility. Now, the effort aims at supplying the vaccine to lower and middle-income advanced market commitment, or AMC countries, 92 nations in Africa, the Americas, and Asia.
In connection to that, WHO Senior Advisor Dr. Bruce said the organization hopes it can be done by February. However, the cooperation of vaccine manufacturers are required to prioritize the matter. Additionally, the cooperation of key suppliers are important for WHO to make sure that they have the necessary data to ensure these vaccines meet all the criteria necessary in terms of efficiency, safety, and quality. As of now, over 40 countries have now begun vaccinating against COVID-19. However, all of the vaccinations were in high-income or middle-income countries. Meanwhile, he hopes that coronavirus vaccination for health workers and those at higher risk in all countries can begin.
Now, a missing man was believed to have been attacked by a crocodile while fishing in Maranet River about 4 a.m. on Tuesday. Now, Fire and Rescue Department Kota Samarahan Operations Chief Abby Herwandi Sarbidi said the incident occurred when the victim, identified as Azian Azhar, set out to the river with his father to catch some fish and prawns at Tuang River, Kota Samarahan.
The SAR operation was jointly operated by three main agencies: the Fire and Rescue Department, Malaysia Civil Defence Force, and the Royal Malaysian Police, which total up to 29 members. The operation was also assisted by the public. However, only boat that fulfills the safety requirement is allowed to participate in the operation.
Kita menetapkan hanya bot-bot yang bersesuaian bagi operasi dan penyelamatan. Okey, di mana kita sedia maklum buaya di Sungai Maranik, di Kampung Maranik ini amat agresif lah. Okey, jadi kita tidak mahu dalam operasi SAR kita hari ini menjadi lebih teruk, di mana spesifikasi bot-bot penyelamatan yang tidak bersesuaian bagi penggunaan pencarian. Okey, diharap hari ini adalah SAR yang pertama, diharap operasi kita berjalan dengan lancar.
Meanwhile, the victim's father said the last object seen was the flashlight which was originally attached to the victim's head.
Masih nunggu juga lah. Mungkinnya ada timbul ke ada apa ke apa katanya. Tapi langsung saya dah lah. Cuma dalam kurang lebih dalam masa 1 minit, lampu suluh yang dipakainya yang terletak di palanya timbul.
Meanwhile, Muara Tuang Assemblyman Dato' Idris Buang advised the local residents to avoid the river for the time being for fears of the incident repeating.
Jadi kita merayulah pada semua penduduk di sekitar Muara Tuang, sungai, apa nama batang sungai tu? Sungai Tuang dan lain-lain tu, batang semarahan, janganlah pergi mengambil ikan ataupun udang masa kini. Sebab masa ini saya ingat Tenggujuh juga memang buaya sebab segi habitatnya memang ganas.
On to the next news, as the mastermind behind a human trafficking syndicate that smuggles in illegal immigrants has been arrested.
Sarawak General Operations Force GOF Brigade Commander Sergeant Assistant Commissioner Mancha Atta said the mastermind, an Indonesian, was detained at around 1 p.m. on Monday by the Sarawak GOF Task Force during the Op Benteng. The suspect was picked up at the ground floor at a hotel in the Batu Tiga area. 4 locals and 17 illegal immigrants, including a boy, were arrested by the team. The task force had acted on information that 3 vehicles from Biawak near the Malaysia-Indonesia border in Lundut district were heading to the city, and the hotel was believed to be a transit point for sending illegal immigrants to Cebu, Tatau, and Bintulu in the north of the state. The suspects were taken to the Padawan District Police headquarters for further investigation.
And that concludes TVS Nightline for tonight, here with me, Cheryl Tramiato. And as always, thank you for tuning in with me tonight. I'll see you next time and have a good night.